This is a cheap milling table I bought on eBay for $80. Shipping included. Now for $80 you don't expect very much in the way of a milling table, and you don't get very much in the way of a milling table. Anyway, this thing is, when I first got it, it had serious issues, and it still it suffers from that a little bit, but it's got some advantages. It's just the right scale for what I need. It's about 7.5 inches by 4 inches or so in terms of the table itself, and it's nice and heavy. That's one thing I really like about it. The thing weighs about 20 pounds. It will tend to stay stable under milling operations. Here's a little bit of a look at it. So you can see that this thing is far from ideal, but it's not bad, and it's cheap. That's the main thing. Okay, take a look at this lead screw. It's pretty darn bent. I'm gonna have to see if I can do something about that. Let me show you what I did here. Because they had the lead screws reversed, the left hand and the right reversed, I had to reverse that, undo their mistake, and it required me to bore a new hole. This is the original hole that this was in, so I just had to bore a new one to match. Let me show you what's happening with these. Okay, so there's just a lock nut on there. And what's going on here is, don't want to lose that little part. This bearing here, nice ball bearing, thrust bearing, great. It's designed to have one here and one on the inside, the back. I'll show you here. Okay, I'm gonna not lose that little gizmo. Here's another, and it turns out to be an identical ball bearing. Well, when I got this, it only had half the right number of ball bearings in it, so I had to order a couple more. Luckily, they're very cheap, very inexpensive. Here's a picture. So you can buy some more ball bearings for that. That improves things a little bit. But even then, and this actually may be the reason they didn't supply all the ball bearings, this goes in here. That's one of the races. Here's the ball bearings, and there's another race. Put this on there, and originally this was right smack up against there, and I had to take this thing out. There, you could do the same thing with a washer. It'd have to be a really nice thin washer. What I did was I just turned this down by maybe 20 or 30 thousandths or so, just enough to give that, to back it off a little so it's not rubbing here. The thing was, I guess the design wasn't extremely well thought out, because they had it set up so that the bearings are real close. Looks great on paper, but it didn't work because it was rubbing right along through here or up through there, rubbing all over the place. So anyway, now I've got that fixed, so it doesn't look quite as sharp, but it works a whole lot better. Okay, this is after, still not perfect, but it's after a little cut. I took a little squaring cut on this shaft. The shaft is fine. It's perfectly straight. It just wasn't quite square there, maybe. Well, I've done some work on this thing, and it's better than it was, but it's still not perfect. This is still a little tight, and it's still a little bit wobbly. Okay, let me show you how this runs without the lead screw in it. Put this on here, tighten the gibs down. Okay, so it's running quite nicely. Nice and smooth, pretty straight. Everything works fine. I don't think I need to scrape the ways or anything. So the only problem is the lead screw. Okay, here's the new bearing. This is the bearing I just turned on the lathe. And here's the whole assembly here. That tends to keep this nice and square. I actually turned this on the lathe so it's absolutely perfectly perpendicular. It's also a nice tight fit. It goes in there like that. Look at how much better this is now with the new bearing. Much better. It's running really straight now. That's a vast improvement. Okay, take a look at this. This is a whole different ball game now. Much better. Noticeable improvement both ways here, X and Y. This is the one I put the new bearing on. This one is pretty good as is. I could do a new bearing for it, but it's quite a lot of trouble for not much improvement. This one here is much better. All in all, I think this is a very fair value after all the work. And $80 is cheap. You just can't buy anything for $80. The shipping for this has got to be at least half that from India or wherever it was made. Anyway, this thing for $80 and a few hours work makes a very nice serviceable milling table. And I think it'll work out fine for me.